going to start with a rant, to be perfectly honest.
All right.
Not necessarily a rant, but just sometimes online. I don't know if you would have ever seen it, but there's a lot of people who always complain about what media outlets within the MMA space put out. And you know what? Rightly so, because I guess it's the same as news, essentially. So if you're following news outlets, but people come to me and say it, and I have to reality check people multiple times per week. I say, I think you forget, this is my page. I put out what I want. I write what I want. If I can't be bothered to cover it, I won't. If it doesn't tickle my fancy, tickle my taste buds, I'm not going to do it. And I think I had to remind myself a couple of times this week, actually. I don't need to succumb to some societal pressure of what I need to write about and not write about. I'll just do whatever. And if that's just some random meme which happened 4 years ago, or if that's top political news, then I'll do it.
Is something triggering this sort of
No.
this level of anger, or has this just come to you?
No, it's not. It's not anger at all. It just reinforced it in my own mind, because not even necessarily people wrote that to me. I just saw people make those comments, and then I felt somewhat attacked because I hadn't been speaking about these things, and then I had to reality check my own self and think, no, it was because of where I said we'd start, which I'm not getting into, or we may as well get into it. The fact that there was 2 just random slurs yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's where you're going. Yeah. I don't know how I didn't pick that one up. Yeah, of course. That was wild.
I was just going to say
Strickland was going to go for the hat trick.
I was just yeah, he was going to he was teed up for a little tap in, weren't he, old Strickland? But yeah, I guess welcome back to Casuals Encounters, podcast 15 with myself, Casuals Corner MMA, and Leo Cooper, myself, Will, and Leo Cooper, MMA. Leo, let's just get straight into it. MMA'd.
Yeah, MMA.
I don't want to... I told you MMAs. I didn't say this was going to happen necessarily, but I told you.
There's always a chance, isn't there?
Be careful.
Yeah, I think we have to give the respect to Sean. I think we already did, but it's because you look at the stats, right, and they tell such a strong picture of how good his striking defense is. But it's like when you come against a guy like Adesanya, a lot of that tends to go out the window. But that was such a brilliant performance. And even more so when you realise that his game plan was to wrestle. That's what he said. And the fact that he just went, right, fuck it, I can hang with this guy. And then, oh my God. So I was watching it with my brother, who's not into the UFC too much, but he was jet lagged as hell because he just got back from America. So he was like, his sleeping pattern was all over the gap. So he was watching it with me, and even he couldn't believe it. He knew like the level of upset this was, and he's not even a big fan. So it's like, I think that speaks volumes to how crazy of a win that was.
Sorry.
And it's not something you can even visualize, is it? I didn't even the visual of Sean Strickland with a gold UFC title wrapped around his waist just shouldn't be real, but then it is in front of you and it's happening. And it's not something I ever pictured, and I've got no shame in admitting that. As much as I think Sean Strickland was a good fighter before this, I have no shame in admitting that I didn't think he was going to become champion, and I'm more than happy to be proven wrong, because it's a deserved performance. He deserved that belt. I don't have anything else to say, really. It was brilliant.
There's so much to unpack with this. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know if we start with the life of Sean Strickland. I don't know if we start with the abilities of Sean Strickland, where Israel Adesanya was at. I really don't even know where to start, but I will start by saying that there's sometimes this thing in the air, and you can really taste it if you watch enough of the background information. If you watch enough interviews, if you watch enough embeddeds, if you watch enough candid conversations around a big fight, there's sometimes these little droplets, these little Easter eggs that you can pick up along the way that just give you the idea that, oh, okay, MMA is going to MMA tonight. And I said that to you before, and listen, I'm not sitting here saying I thought he was going to 50-45 Adesanya. Didn't think I didn't call that. Yeah. I didn't call that. Did I think he could win? I definitely did. I didn't think he was just going to absolutely outstrike him masterclass. I didn't expect that. However, when you look at the fight week building up, right, there were just a few things that were just a little bit off. And then when it got to fight night, and Sean Strickland was walking out. He looked incredibly nervous. Don't get me wrong.
That was my initial, as soon as the cameras went to him.
Did you get a little bit worried at that
Like he
point?
was nervous. Yeah, it was that, and also the face-off when he couldn't look him in the eye, and he kept laughing, as sort of Strickland does, but I feel like that could be potentially a bit of a defense mechanism. And to be honest, I think both of those things were true. I mean, it's normal for anyone to get nervous, let alone the best fighters in the world, but he did also say he doubted himself at times, so I think that's a fair point to make, which in a way makes the win even more impressive.
I think we really saw it unveil in front of our very eyes, because we saw every part of that process. We saw him walk out with that self-doubt and that nervousness and that sort of caged up energy. And although that was happening, I didn't think this is necessarily a bad thing, because the way I saw it was, it almost seemed that this is the biggest moment of Sean Strickland's life. Everything he's ever done in his life is channeled into this one moment. And then it pans to Israel Adesanya, who's been doing this week in, week out, quite literally, for the last half a decade, at the very pinnacle, with all the attention, all the media, all the cameras. This is another day at the office. Very contrasting stages of this fight, right? And then when you actually have a look at the fight, you can see in that first couple of minutes, there was still that mystique to Adesanya, the hip feints, the twitches. Sean was biting a lot, and naturally you're going to do that, someone so skilled.
Yeah,
but
of course.
You could see, right, as soon as that right hand landed, Sean realised,
that was surreal, man.
I've sparred everyone in the world. I've competed with everyone. I've taken down Uncle Ive in the gym. I've beaten up every man across the world. I can stand with anyone. As soon as he landed a couple of shots, I think he just knew, right, we're in a fight now, and this is mine to lose after a few rounds. And that was kind of crazy. What did you think of Adesanya's performance necessarily?
I think it was, honestly, more of a case of Strickland being so good and doing all the right things. I think the main thing for me was the footwork and the positioning. The cage control was just, there's a difference, because there's two options when you fight Adesanya. Either you try and hang at that kickboxing range and you're just going to get pieced apart because you're too afraid of the counter and you don't want to come in. Or you go in and take it to him and get clipped on the inside. Sean rode the fine line right between those.
True.
He pressed forward and he took control. But he was just in that range where kicks weren't effective. He was able to read them really easily, but he was able to implement his striking, as on his terms, And yeah, it was masterful. I felt suffocated watching that fight.
Yeah,
just the way Adesanya had nowhere to run. I haven't seen that in a long time. Someone so oppressive just with their footwork and positioning alone, because realistically his output for the first 3 rounds wasn't a huge amount, and he was still winning the rounds purely just because of where he was at all times, making it was so uncomfortable for Adesanya for those 25 minutes. There was never a point where I think Izzy really could get his game plan off. And he said in between rounds to Eugene Behrman, I can't get my jab going, which is rare because that's a cornerstone of his plan usually when he goes in there. So I think it's more of a credit to Sean, rather than Izzy's putting in a disappointing performance. But something I did really want to pick up on was, you talked about the nerves being a good thing, and I agree. And I think back to George St. Pierre talking about it. I was watching I remember what the video was, but he was just going in depth about talking about his fighting career, and he says how he was sort of grateful for being nervous because in the whole build up, the fight camp, weeks and weeks up until the 15, 25 minutes in the cage, all those nerves building up on him, they motivated him to train harder because he's worried his opponent is doing more than him. So he kept going and trying to reach that next level. And that's clearly why he was so successful. So I think weaponizing your nerves is something I think Strickland maybe tapped into a little bit of, maybe just intrinsically. But it was a brilliant performance. More towards Strickland's just outright success rather than Adesanya's weakness.
It's a good point, because I think that's what he done perfectly, was just got that great balance between the kickboxing but boxing range, that sort of muddy water that Sean Strickland strikes at, where he done a really good job at evading the low kick. And that, like you said, that's what sets up all of Adesanya's game. So once he couldn't establish that and he couldn't establish his jab, that was sort of the unraveling of all the best attributes of Adesanya, if you like. And if you have a look at Sean's style, he actually mitigates those weapons arguably better than anyone. He does such a good job with that front leg of keeping it really light. Yeah. He's always just sliding out of range. He's not there to be kicked. And then his hand fighting is just so good. I think when you look at both of these people, and it's coming back to what I said with the Easter eggs, right? I think Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya are very much different, but the same people. I think they're very much the same people. I think they both go in that cage. I think they express themselves. I think they express trauma that they've had in their lives. I think they express themselves creatively. I think they do it in a very different style and a very different voice. I think they're cut from the same cloth. And if you have a look at the build-up, there was never necessarily this
No,
sort
you
of,
could tell there's a bit of camaraderie there,
yeah, there
right?
wasn't this
Yeah, you could always see it.
animosity between them. And like you said, camaraderie, perfect word. And Israel never seemed to be too discomfortable. And it was almost like in that fifth round, it was almost this weird moment where it was sort of, you know what? This is your moment, Sean Strickland. This is your moment. This is not my night. I'm happy in my life. I've accomplished a lot of things. Not necessarily he gave up and threw in the towel, but even Sean Strickland said it in the interview. He said he felt like he stopped trying. And when you watch that performance, it just seemed to me energy, concentration, focus is like a sponge. It's like a muscle, right? There's only so many times you can use that. And you have a look at Israel Adesanya, and in 5 years, the activity,
It's crazy, isn't
the
it?
championship fights, the stress on the body, the kickboxing record, the lights, the cameras, all this intense fame. You hear about these champions talk about it being a relief almost in the fourth and fifth round. It seemed as if you saw Izzy sort of just relieving that pressure a little bit. It was weird. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Did you
I
feel
get what
that?
you mean. I think something I really wanted to just pick up on was, I know we rambled about this a few weeks ago with Aljamain Sterling and the backlash he got, so I don't want to delve too much into it, but I feel like Izzy sort of has that same reputation. I don't really understand it, the hate he gets, despite how,
It's
you know,
MMA fans, Leo.
that level, yeah, the level of humility he
That's
has,
the
and
answer.
how honourable he is in, yeah, of course, but how honourable he is in taking a loss. And I don't think many do take a loss better than he does.
Agreed.
And which makes the hate even a bit stranger to me. People saying he wasn't taking his loss like a man, getting served humble pie, despite the fact he's on with it. He's happy with his life, and I think that, what more can you ask for? And maybe that is a crux of why he lost. I don't know. I think maybe when you don't have something to drive for, the lack of motivation is there. I mean, when you've been on top for so long, it does happen. And to be honest, I struggle to see if Izzy can get the title back. I really do. I think it's all well and good climbing that mountain for the second time, and then that relief of being back on top. But doing it a third time, I don't know if he has the mental legs and or
Ooh.
fortitude to really do that. And it
Ooh.
even speaks more volumes to the Drickus du Plessis prediction, because I think that reaffirms it. I do think now Drickus would beat him pretty certainly now. I know that's maybe a hot take to many, but I'm sure you probably maybe on that line of thinking.
I think you definitely mentioned it, and you have to. The most important thing is you have to give Israel Adesanya his flowers. The
Yeah, of
consistency,
course.
the people he's fought, the murders row, the Bobby Knuckles, the Derek Bronsons, the Kelvin Gastelums, the Jared Cannoniers, the Jan Blachowicz, the Alex Pereiras. We are talking murders row of middleweights history. Yoel Romero, lest I forget. Anderson Silva, may I forget. So we're looking at the legacy of Israel, and I believe maybe it's almost that he's in this point of his life where he's accomplished so much and he has such enrichment with friends and family around him. Almost feels like he's at this point where he knows that. Sorry,
It's too good, isn't it? You're good.
It's almost like he's at this point where he knows that fighting isn't everything, isn't the be all and end all. And I think when you have a look at Israel and what he's done, it's almost even more incredible that he's this person that's come onto the scene with this extensive kickboxing record. He's gone and done what he's done in the UFC. He's dared to be great. He's moved up a weight class. He faced his demons in Alex Pereira. He's won. He's lost. He's come back. He's hurt. It's almost the perfect storytelling. It's the perfect story for Israel Adesanya because he isn't like everyone else. I don't think his journey was to come in, just be a champion, and that's his whole identity. I always think he's been more than that. And I think his path in MMA has always shown that. And I could never write him out of doing anything. If he comes back and wins a belt, if he comes back to light heavyweight and wins a belt, I can't write him out of absolutely anything. But
he's too good not to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it just looked like maybe there was an injury. Maybe it was just a camp too many. 5-round fights. 5-round fights are ridiculous. Listening to Tim Welch just talk about the difference in preparing Shug for 3 to 5 rounds and hearing how frequently Adesanya's doing this. And when you're champion, you don't rest. Because guess what? There's always someone barking at your heels and the promotion are always trying to leverage a massive fight. If you're around the top 15 or just outside, you win a fight, you have a holiday, you go back to training, you sort of chill, compress. When you're champion, people are like this. 24/7. The cameras are on. The lights are bright. Everywhere around you, screaming your name. Photos, fans. I think he just needs a break. I think he needs a couple of months away from MMA.
Do you not think he had that, though? When losing to Pereira like that, I feel...
No, he got straight back into it.
No, but I'm... Yeah.
I think he just needs a break. I don't know if he comes back and fights for the title. I don't know if that's the case.
All right, well, that's a question, isn't it? Do you think he deserves one? I'll throw that to you. Do you think he deserves a third shot?
No.
I don't think he deserves it. No, I agree.
Not in the entertainment business of the... No, I don't. No.
Well, Dana said that's going to happen. I said that's what we look...
I get why he said that, but I think when he thinks it through and when he sees fans online...
I hope not.
I think it changes. I guarantee it changes.
Yeah. I agree. I think either you make the Drickus fight as an eliminator or you just give Drickus the shot. I don't know.
What sense would it to make?
The fight to me... Yeah. I mean, what, to do a rematch? No.
Yeah, what sense?
I agree. There isn't really any. And I think it's an interesting one, actually, putting Drickus against Sean, because...
That's so fun.
It is fun as fuck, isn't
it? So fun.
I thought it's like a fight. Imagine saying
John
that.
Geezer
Imagine we were saying that. Yeah. Imagine we were saying that like 2 months ago. I would not have believed it. But it's a weird one, isn't it? Because, Sean isn't really... It was almost the fight we always wanted to see, was Adesanya or Strickland being tested against a real proper wrestler. Because I feel the last time Sean really was tested against an elite caliber wrestler was Kamaru Usman. And obviously that didn't turn out well for him. But you have to again say and concede that was quite a while ago. So
and welterweight,
Sean would no doubt at welterweight as well. Yeah, so different ball game. But it's questions that I think as fans we want to have answered. And I'd love that fight, to be honest. I think the build-up would be hilarious. Because Adesanya would be catching strays, despite the fact he's not even fighting.
That would be fun.
I love it. It would be brilliant.
Sean Strickland versus Drickus du Plessis is essentially the fight on the poster of the circuses in the 1800s with the men with the moustaches.
I completely agree
with
that.
The dumbbells. That is the modern day equivalent of what we're about to get, and it's the pinnacle of mixed martial arts and fighting. And that does go to show. It does go to show you, though, with Sean Strickland, those countless hours of sparring, his eyes in the pocket are just not like many people. And like you said, his footwork and his suffocating style. And
I almost hated watching it the whole time. Because I was just waiting for something to happen, and I hated the anticipation. I was always on edge that he was going to fire that right down the middle again, or Adesanya was going to throw an absolute bomb. I hated how close they were the whole time, with Strickland just plodding.
Yeah,
I hated it, and I loved it at the same time.
The range was really uncomfortable.
I think I said to you beforehand that I could see a question mark kick, because a lot of the times Sean goes to parry to the body, and that leaves that only up head. But it was from the first kick that Izzy threw, and Sean just blocked it like it was nothing.
Yeah,
it wasn't even a partial block. Completely disregarded it because he was at that perfect range where he could read it easily, and he kept doing it. I was like, there's no way that kick's going to land, and it didn't. And it was a masterclass in defensive striking. It was, it was beautiful to watch. It really was. I can't believe we're even saying this right now. No, that's MMA, isn't it? Quick shout out actually to the guy who lost 220 grand. You deserve that for betting that amount of money on an MMA fight.
I have, you know what? I do feel some validation. Last thing I'll say on this, I do feel some validation because for the last 2 years, genuinely, I'm not just saying this, for the last 2 years, I've always posted Sean Strickland content. People always really like it. It's been growing as a fan favourite for sure. But people always talk about his defence, and I've always replied to people the same thing because it's true. The best defensive statistics in the middleweight history, like statistically.
And I can't hit him.
And I'm not saying that all those stats are perfectly accurate, but I'm saying they average themselves out enough to get a good enough reading that Sean Strickland is the best. And he just demonstrated that Exhibit A against one of the best counter strikers we've ever seen. It was actually a masterclass. It was amazing.
It really was.
Strickland,
There's one thing I almost wouldn't have been happy if he got that finish in the first round.
oh my word,
Like,
that caught me off guard.
Yeah, but I would have. I'm actually really glad it went
True.
to 5 rounds because it didn't really leave any doubt that Strickland deserved to be in there. It wasn't like a shot that he caught him with. Like it was domination. I'm not going to say otherwise. It was a really. I can't believe you're even saying this. It feels surreal, man. But yeah, fair play, Sean Strickland. I have to say, I have to give him all the flowers.
Volkov is equal choke. Pretty impressive, I thought.
Yes,
that was nice.
I love that when that happened. Bit of trivia for you because I'm pretty sure this is right. Do you know when who got the last Ezekiel choke?
Probably Alex Olenek
that's the one.
Against Jad Vandera.
That's the one. Yeah, I believe it was Vandera. It's definitely Olenek. Yeah, that was yeah, well done. I love it because it's such
you did a thing there, didn't you?
No. I was testing you.
I'm not that good with those, to be fair.
It's a bit of a meme sub, and that's why I was happy he got it because in jiu-jitsu it's one of those. It's like one of the first subs you learn as a white belt, and once you ever get subbed with it, the general rule of thumb is you never get subbed with it again because the defense is pretty much as simple as just tuck your chin, and that's kind of really it. You don't really need to do much else, and it's quite funny when you see even the most experienced of guys in an MMA fight, the best fighters on the planet, getting caught with one because you don't expect it because what kind of professional MMA fighter is going to throw up an Ezekiel choke because it's never gonna like hit right, and then when it does because you never expect it, and that's the beauty of it. And I'd love to see something like that. Yeah,
I don't think it's so much the lack of defense. Put it this way: you don't see it's been hit 3 times in the UFC, and at what weight classes? It's a big boy submission. You're not going to get it at any other weight class, probably than 205, maybe to heavyweight, because you just need that amount of force and pressure. And you think of Volkov. You think of Volkov with an Ezekiel choke. As soon as he started locking that up, I actually thought he's going to get this. Just because of the sheer amount of pressure that's going onto your throat. Whether even if your chin is tucked, for that defense there for Tai Tuivasa, there's just too much.
Wrangle your way through.
Too much body. There's too much body going into one point of a human. But that's a bit of an awkward one for Tai Tuivasa because where does that leave him now? Does that just leave him fun fights around the top 10?
Yeah, I mean, why not? He doesn't need. I wouldn't exactly say he lost any stock there. He absolutely went for it and had a lot of good success with the leg kicks. I think the longer if that fight didn't go to the mat, I think the tide was shifting there, and I don't think a lot of people would be too mad about me saying that because I think those leg kicks were really adding up. Volkov could barely even stand. He was looking good. He started landing more shots, even though they're a bit wild. That's what Tuivasa does, but he was growing into that fight. But Volkov had a very good performance. I think he did what Volkov does,
How good is
and
Volkov,
he used that reach. Man. He really is, man.
He's so good.
I hate to bring up Aspinall again, but that does make that just shows you how good that win is to beat him so soundly.
To ban him.
Yeah, and to beat him that
Tom
easily,
Aspinall,
and then you look at. Yeah, well, I mean, as a fan, I don't want to, but
here he is, actually, the man.
Yeah,
the man himself.
I still need to put that poster up. I've got it.
Forgot the man himself's over my shoulder. Look at him. Look at the back tat. He's a demon, isn't he? I
have to say, I will say, I'm not, as much as I'm not like a tattoo guy. That back tattoo is probably the coolest in all of MMA. I got to say, Volkov's back tat is. Yeah, it's awesome, man. I love it.
Who's is better, Volkov's or Tom Aspinall's?
They're quite similar, aren't they? They've both got that sort of.
I feel like
I don't know what you call it.
Satanic?
Yeah, they're cool. To be honest, actually, I always do like this is a bit of a tangent, but I always like the a lot of the New Zealand guys. I love their tattoos. They're sort of I don't want to say the wrong thing, but their cultural stems from their cultural influence and stuff. Tyson Pedro
stems from their cultural influences. You sound like a PR package.
Mate, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
You sound like UFC 293 PR pack at the UFC.
I have respect. I have respect for for the New Zealand people. So I don't want to say the wrong thing.
The Maui culture.
But Tyson Pedro's Maui culture. Tyson Pedro's tattoos are really cool. And speaking of Tyson Pedro, I got to say. Great performance over a guy who I only heard about all this discourse about this Swedish dude, like right until my fight day. This Pleasure Man guy. Apparently he's like this persona. I had no idea about this guy, but bit of a weird dude. But he looked flat and Pedro absolutely. Yeah, Anton. What?
Wait,
This
what?
character he's playing.
I
Have you
know,
not seen all this?
I know
It's really
him as a
weird.
fighter quite like fairly well because I watched him on Dana White's. I've seen him train with Hamza. I've watched his UFC fight. He took a short notice fight
Yeah,
upper
against
weight
Almeida.
against Jailton Almeida. That is a badass move because that is a terrifying fight. But
But he
what?
has this weird
Yeah, what's the
persona. Have you
persona
not seen
thing?
this?
Not really.
So I only heard about this on the day. He's called the. It really threw me off because John
The
Anik
Pleasure
mentioned when he
Man.
was walking out. Yeah,
Terrible name.
apparently his dad gave him that name. I was like, that's a bit weird. Why is your
Horrible.
dad calling you that? And then I heard all this stuff about him playing this persona about everything is to do with pleasure. I was like, that's just a weird
Elaborate.
caricature to play. No, there isn't anything to elaborate on. That's the mystique of it. He just never specifies what that actually means.
He's not that great to watch. I've watched him a few times, and I always bet against him. He's okay, but I mean, he's not.
I mean, Pedro absolutely doggled him. Let's not beat around the bush. And I got to say that celebration was one of the coldest things I've ever seen.
That was pretty cool.
After he flattened him, that was pretty cool. It's just I love it when these Australian and oceanic events. This is what I said in my latest video. Was just it always has that something in the air, doesn't it? It always brings it. And it's always these fight cards. That is the golden rule, which I'm now standing by forever. It's always the on paper less impressive cards that always end up being the absolute bangers.
Ooh.
And we had a lot of bangers last night. I got to say, Justin Taffer,
He's a big boy.
absolutely laying
He's
out Austin Lane.
Boy. He was throwing hook kicks.
Oh my god, I didn't realize how tall Austin Lane was. That was wild. He's very, yeah, but he got clipped. Yeah, no, it was. Oh, actually, yeah, this was the one I really wanted to pick up on. Sorry, I'm sort of going a million miles an hour here, but Manel Kape versus Felipe dos Santos. I said when you have an undefeated, short notice guy making his debut, yeah, I was really impressed. Despite the fact he lost, I think when you look at how young he is and where he can build to, he's such a his frame's so small and skinny, and that was clearly he didn't have that power compared to Manel Kape. But you imagine down the line, give him 10 years when he's really in his fighting prime. He's going to be a problem if he really sticks at this because he had the striking discipline, I think, in a lot of at least offensively, way ahead of I think a lot of peers the same age as him. And yeah, I was very impressed, especially on such a short notice. 7-0, I think he is, and to have that much experience at just 7-0, I was very impressed. Manel Kape is a legit contender. Probably will fight for a title in the near future. Yeah, what did you think there?
I just don't see it with Manel Kape. And he sees it, and everyone sees it, and I just don't ever see it.
I see it in a case of, I think
he's good.
The title shot will fall to his hands. I don't think he will necessarily win the belt. I think lack of fight IQ is a glaring problem with him, and I think that's always going to be a problem with him. It's something he struggled with a lot. His counter striking is very good, I have to say, and he's damn fast. But yeah, he was getting clipped a little bit too much for my liking, I have to say. I mean, maybe that's more of a credit to how good Santos was. I was so impressed. Really impressed.
What else was on that card?
We've basically... forgot about it. Carlos Olberg. So good, that guy. He is terrifyingly long and rangy, and I'd hate to fight him because he's really growing into a complete fight. He has all the tools, and I was actually really happy to see him get that takedown there in the third round against Do Jung because not something we've seen a lot of with Carlos. He hasn't been tested enough. He's getting first round knockouts left, right, and center. That check left hook is absolutely money for him. So get 15 minutes in the bank, in the cage, because there's a difference. You can go 15, 25 minutes in sparring, when you're preparing in fight camp. There's a difference when you're in the cage and different ball games. So to really get that experience and have that in your locker and say, right, I can go there. I can get these takedowns. I can really make this a fight. And he did that. And I'm not sure. Did it get? Oh yeah, it did. It got overturned to a submission. I wasn't sure. It didn't look like he tapped, but I found, it did afterwards. I thought it was a decision, but no, it got overturned to a rear naked choke.
Yeah, he subbed him.
And that's a testament to his sense of urgency.
Subbed him.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, they're in the. He's got the back last few seconds. They just sit there and say, "Okay, I got the win." Not Carlos. He went for it. He's like, "I want to finish here. I want to keep that going. I want that momentum," and he did, and he got it against a really credible opponent. What did you think of it?
I thought, what does this fella not have? And then I thought, not got the best mic skills. That's the only thing I'd say. He's got pretty much everything else. He's got pretty much every other box ticked. It's like you're really clutching at straws to find something, to be perfectly honest. But he's not great on the mic. He does open his mouth and you think, oh,
What, just boring, or
you just think, ooh, he's a pretty face, but on the mic, he doesn't have much, does he? He's not very.
Do you need that though?
Charismatic. He's not very sort of witty on the post-fight mic. Sort of like, ooh, everyone was listening. Ooh, that wasn't that great. I don't think that it makes him a bad fighter. I'm just jealous of him entirely.
That's the point then.
I'm just jealous of him entirely. I need to find something to attach.
To say, right, you're not good enough at this.
I need that something. You can't be a flawless individual. I need something to grasp to. And that's all I'm grasping to be honest, because it's not his trim. Fantastic fade and great physique.
Very true.
And fantastic fighting abilities. So, yeah,
very nice.
in terms of apex predators, he's definitely up there, and he's a well-groomed one. But on the mic, not great.
Yeah, in a division where I think it's fair to say a little bit more shallower than most in terms of competition. I think you can really make that crack the top 15 in a lot more. It's a lot more reasonable to crack that top 15 in a short amount of time.
You can't call out Dom Reyes. You can't do that. That's just everyone's sitting at home thinking, don't. Even he was on the mic.
I like that fight though.
He went Dom Reyes, and he was like, I feel dirty for doing this.
The fight though. I like the fight.
Someone hits really hard, and someone who's realistically hit very hard, closes his eyes in the pockets. I'll just remind you.
Just remind you. It's MMA. MMA can MMA, and I love that matchup stylistically. I think it's fun. I don't hate it personally. I think it's a good time.
You're telling me you didn't feel dirty listening to that call out?
I mean, I'm not going to sit and say I don't think Oldberg would win convincingly.
That's the equivalent to calling out Tony Ferguson if you're 155 pounds.
Nah, come on now.
Yes, it is. Yes,
no way.
Is. I think it's worse. I think it's worse.
No way. You really don't think Dominic Reyes can rebound it in the slightest?
Calling out Dominic Reyes right now.
I'm glad we disagree on this quite strongly, because I think that's completely
dirtier than calling Tony Ferguson out if you're a up and coming 155.
That's waffle, mate. That is it's not.
Waffle. It's 100%. Do you want me to explain why? I'll explain why.
Go, please.
I'll easily explain why.
I cannot agree with you at all here.
We look at Tony Ferguson, obviously 38 years of age, so many wars, all these different things. Let's actually have a look at his last fight. He went 3 very close rounds with Bobby Green, an absolute mainstay staple of the UFC. Got submitted in the 3rd round, lost the fight. Very close fight up to that point. We look at Dominic Reyes. Literally, I'm not trying to hate. I'm just showing what we said. Like, career-changing, life-changing knockouts on the spin, 4 times. The way that he face-planted against Yuri Prochazka, there's a case to say that he possibly could never have fought again. 3 times, sorry. There's possibly a case to say he could have never have fought again. Possibly. And then you have a look at all the other knockouts, and then even most recently against Ryan Spann. Tony has not been life-changing KO'd that many consistent times, and Tony's eyes are open in the pocket. Am I wrong? Man. Am I wrong though?
Michael Chandler sent him to the 9th realm.
That's like the craziest KO ever. That is literally like the craziest KO ever. 100%. Is that because Tony's old, or is that like the stupidest kick of all time? Look at his legs. It's both. Of course, it's a bit of both. But my point is, that literally lands on 98% of people. You don't lose 6 in a row
or whatever he's done in.
Listen, I'm not saying he's at the peak of his powers. I'm just saying. I'm not saying he should be fighting for a belt. But I'm saying it feels dirtier. You're someone that's got 1-hit power, and you're calling out Dominic Reyes. Come on.
No, I would like to remind you that this is admitted by him, admitted by the man himself. Dominic Reyes did knock out Yuri Prochazka. He flash knocked him out, and then So let's not in the middle of that fight, Prochazka went out.
But what's happened since that? Up.
No, but this is my point.
Mentally, what's happened since that? He's been KO'd flatlined. And every time he's walking into that cage, he's looking at these 240-pound monsters, 6'6" in front of him. And all he's seeing are these flashbacks of him just like looking up at the lights. And he's in the pocket and they're throwing tight hooks. And he's like, oh my goodness, I'm not really ready for this again.
I think Holberg beats him, but that comparison to Tony Ferguson, no way is that the same.
I think it's just a dirty
Dominic Reyes has all the chance to come back if he can overcome the mental battle. I don't think if he beats John Jones, which he did, let's not beat around the bush. He deserves to have his hand raised.
These are ifs.
That's not. I don't think. Well, that's not an if because that happened. That he should have got. No. You're with me there though. You can't sit here and say he should have had his. You don't think he won that fight? You don't think he won that fight?
That was literally one of the first fights I ever watched, genuinely. And I remember, as a completely unknowing MMA fan, I remember thinking, oh, I thought the geezer who was really famous lost that. I remember saying that.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And it didn't happen. And he has lost since then. And he has been KO'd brutally since then. It didn't happen. So I can't play that fantasy. I get it. It was close and ifs and buts. But it didn't. And I have seen him go face first, land on his face, spinning elbowed after a 5-round war with Yuri.
Yeah, that was rough, man.
I have seen that. And it was one of the most brutal. I'm saying this genuinely because I was scared watching it.
No, I agree.
When I watched the replay and I'm watching him lifeless, getting a spinning elbow to the face, lifeless drop on his neck, and his neck rubbers like that as he just flatlines. And it looks as if his spine's going to snap. And I'm thinking, that's one of the most brutal knockouts I've ever seen. And that man is never going to live the same life again. And you're sat here trying to tell me that I'm like, that's a batshit crazy thing to say, that Tony Ferguson is not, is a less dirty call out.
I'm not with you. It is. You can't sit. Tony Ferguson is a way worse call out if you're up and coming in terms of that's a bit of a dirty move than Dominic Reyes. I'm sorry. And I'm purely going on not just the knockouts.
In his fights. Tony's been competitive in his fights.
I'm not with you there.
Has Dominic Reyes been competitive in his fights? Genuinely, this is a question.
Yeah, he was competitive against Jury. He was beating Jury.
Was he competitive in his fights?
Yes. Not against Span because he got absolutely laid out, but he absolutely was against Jury.
No, like, I hear what you're saying about Yuri, but like it's different at 205 when you get.
Nah, you're moving the goalpost.
No. I mean this genuinely. When you're talking about 205ers, I think the conversation's different to a competitive fight to 155 because I think if you get KO'd like that probably will be life changing. At 155, they're not the biggest. Those Yuri flipping, all those guys, 240 pounds, they're life-changing KOs, like life-changing. So like, even if they're competitive, the way that they're ending, that Ryan Spann one, he looked like he just dropped lifeless in the middle of the octagon, like a bag of bones. Come on, you're sat here saying if he can get the mental game, he could be on the track for a belt. I mean, I love to give everyone every... Yes, you did.
I didn't say he could go for a belt. I said, no. I said he could come back, he could rebound. I never said he's going to win the belt, but I think to say that's a worse call out than Tony Ferguson is absolute heresy. I'm sorry. I can't... Tony Ferguson loses to just about everyone in the lightweight division. Dominic Reyes does not. That's the way I see it.
That's ridiculous. He loses to everyone in the lightweight division. He just won 3 rounds with Bobby Green.
Bobby Green was pretty dominant. I don't think you can make a case of Tony winning any of those rounds.
It was a close fight. It was just like back and forth.
Yeah,
but my point is, Bobby Green is like a 10 to 15 numbered mainstay at 155 pounds. That's a big,
but then you could also say Dominic Reyes basically nearly beat someone who would go on to be a champion. What you say? Were you saying the same about Ferguson?
I'm just saying the fights were pretty close. I'm just saying the fights were pretty close.
Well, you said the same about Reyes. Prochazka was a close fight as well up until the knockout.
No, it was. He knocked him out. But the thing is, that's my point. It's like it can't be a close fight anymore at those sizes when you lose that bad. Does that make sense? Because the discrepancy just goes like zoom. It's like it's close, and then it's like Bobby Green submits him. It's like Bobby Green, but it's like close, and then it's like fall on your face, KO, zoom, discrepancy
Well,
crazy.
I'm saying, and then we'll keep the same energy for Ferguson against Chandler. Same
All
thing,
right.
then, isn't it?
No, that was
Exactly.
shit. Right, let's agree to
Yeah.
disagree
No,
anyway.
yeah.
I'm not doing this anymore.
I think that's the first time we've had an actual, like, full-on, I completely disagree with the other person. Because generally, I think we're pretty level-headed on our whether it's down to our picks or our decision. A lot of the times, we're pretty similar-minded.
Well,
That was good.
I didn't know we had a Dom Reyes fan club.
I'm not a huge fan of Reyes.
I
just
like
think
Reyes. I do.
I like the guy. I feel sorry for him, actually, because I think he got robbed of the belt, really, and I think that is one of the worst decisions, and clear, not because of he wasn't dominant, but like it was a clear 3-2 in that fight. I don't think there's no case for Jones winning that, in my opinion, at all. I think he won the four. It was so obviously Jones 4 and 5, and then the rest 1, 2, 3 Reyes. I've always thought that.